Hello, and thank you for joining this session. My name's Simon Cuthbert, and today we're going to talk about how to take control of access rights as a business. Just a little bit about me before we start. I've been in IT security for far too long now, about 30 years. I've worked with some of the most leading edge technologies to come to market throughout that time. I'm the founder and CEO of VAR Channels, a consultancy. I'm a government and parliamentary advisor on cybersecurity and also a regular contributor around security on LBC radio. So on today's agenda, why managing access rights is so important, what are the common pitfalls to avoid, how we can implement the principle of least privilege, and what is the role of access reviews in data security. So let's start at the very beginning. When we talk about access rights, what do we mean? Well, access rights, data access rights or permissions is the process by which users within your business gain access to data that they need to perform their role. Now, most users gain additional access rights throughout their time within an organization, but rarely are these excessive privileges removed. Poor permissions management can make it easier for the bad guys too. So let's just take a look at that for a minute. Now, external actors are now more frequently targeting standard business users with excessive permissions to gain access to companies' critical infrastructure and their critical data. They know that a lot of the time and money has been spent on shoring up the admin's privileged access to servers and firewalls, etc. So they're now starting to focus their attention on more unsuspecting users within the organization that either have excessive or dormant access to infiltrate the network. According to research by Intermedia and Osterman Research, 89% of employees leave their jobs with a valid login and password to at least one business application belonging to their former employers. And 49% admitted to logging into their account even after leaving their company. Add to that the research from Cybersecurity Insiders that tells us that between 2018 and 2020, incidents involving insider threats have increased by 47%. And during this year alone, 57% of organizations felt that incidents have become more frequent from problems around business users with too much access to critical and sensitive data. We have to make a few assumptions here, of course, mainly that the increase this year is partially due to business users that have been working from home, nobody looking over their shoulder and merely clicking their way through file servers to see what they can see. But remember, just because we're starting to go back to the office, the problem hasn't gone away. It's very much still there. The challenge around users with too much access to sensitive and critical data isn't new, of course. It's been a challenge for a very, very long time. But why has it been so difficult to get a grip? And when we put it into its most simplistic form, it should be a simple problem to address. The security risk caused by excessive access rights is so great that now in the United States, the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security have issued a public service announcement warning that an increase from insider threats from disgruntled and/or former employees can be traced to excessive permissions and authorized access to sensitive information within your network. As part of a customer survey undertaken by Tenfold, one of the top 5 concerns that customers have around access management is being able to maintain compliance, because you have lots of differing rules and regulations. It takes up far too much time, and it's not really a role for IT. It really is a business process. And of course, the lack of compliance can lead to big fines. We saw the breach with British Airways, where they were fined £20 million in 2018. And they also had a second breach in 2020. But so far, we have a total European of fines of over €1 billion because organizations have violated compliance and it's becoming more expensive, and that's increasing significantly. In general terms, we find that IT are always busy, so putting ownership of permission onto that department really doesn't make any sense. Add to that the idea that routine tasks around permissions management take up valuable time and resource. Why not just use a solution like Tenfold that will automate a lot of these processes? We also have to acknowledge at this point that Microsoft tools alone will never give you the ability to track permissions across multiple systems and multiple processes and platforms, and that there's no way to really assign temporary permissions. So let's have a look at an example of how permissions management generally works today without the use of a Tenfold type of solution. We have a new user within our organization. We'll call her Anna. Anna needs access to a particular folder in the department she's joining, which is HR. Now, David's been in HR for 5 years. So you know what? Let's just give her the same permissions that David's got. After 6 months, Anna's going to join a project. She needs access to data for that project, and that data is held in finance. So Anna is given access to that accounting data. When that project's finished, Anna's then going to move to a different department. She likes financing so much, she's moved to the finance department. But again, what permissions does she need? Well, let's look at the users within that organization and that department. Steve will have the same permissions. Let's give them to Anna. They'll all be correct. So now Anna's snowball of permissions has already grown out of control, because if we look at David's permissions, David's not only been in HR for 5 years, he's been in the organization for 10 years and has already worked in several different departments within the company. All of his legacy permissions now become Anna's legacy permissions. And the same is very true for Steve as well. But how many of those permissions does she actually need? Well, most of those permissions are unnecessary. So when you look at the principal of least privilege, Anna will only need a small portion of those. Now, a key part of the principal of least privilege is to ensure that only the right users have access to the right data at the right time. So let's have a look at how we implement the principal of least privilege. Well, first of all, it needs to be based on role-based access, not user-based access. Permissions are assigned to roles within that organization. So they need to be defined. Now that is defined not by IT, that is defined by the business. Users are then assigned to those roles and they get the permissions that are relevant to those roles. And when their roles change, permissions are adjusted automatically. This is going to prevent legacy permissions from being carried over. Now, of course, there are instances when users will need to maintain some of the legacy permissions for a period of time during a handover if they're moving from one department to another, for instance. That's fine. With Tenfold, you can assign temporary permissions or put a stop time of 3 months of when those legacy permissions need to end, and that will stop automatically. Again, this is all done using a Tenfold front end by the business users. Now, we talk about assigning data. We need to look at the data owners themselves. The data owners sit within the business. They are generally the heads of departments or a delegate within that specific department. Now, all of those standard roles are covered within the requirements, and requesting additional rights from IT is going to be slow and cumbersome. So that's why we request it directly from the data owner. We need to empower our stakeholders to make informed decisions quickly. And through Tenfold and the Tenfold front end, that's very, very easy to do. To give you a very quick example, if I'm a user, I go and I want access to data, I go to the Tenfold front page, I click on the folder I want access to, I give a reason that I need access to that folder and click submit. That submission goes immediately to the data owner. The data owner is the head of department. They get an email to ask them to review and accept or revoke that request. They open their Tenfold front page, review, either assign or deny. If they assign, that access is given immediately to the user. Again, IT don't get involved in this whatsoever. This is purely a business process. Now, something that I find is really important here are the user access reviews, recertification. Now, recertification is a process where periodically assessing the rights of anyone who has access to the enterprise and systems and data is incredibly important. Now, these users can include employees, partners, third parties, service providers, and vendors. Performing user account reviews is critical to monitor, manage, and audit the user account life cycle from creation to termination and everywhere in between. This is a process, again, that is reviewed via the data owners within the business. It's an automated process. The business owners and the data owners get a notification. They look at the list of data that they have and the users that have access to it, and simply click yes or no, or change the type of access that the users have. Maybe it's read write and it needs to be execute or read only. They make these changes within Tenfold, click submit, and the changes are made automatically. So in conclusion, business needs to take control of permissions management. The model needs to be based on roles, not on users. Data owners need to be assigned within the business to enable the process to be streamlined and that approval process to be cut down and taken away from a ticketing system or a help desk or that phone call or that email that IT departments regularly receive from users banging on the table saying, I need access to this data and I need it now. This is a business process which goes through a business. Through regular access reviews and recertifications or attestations, there are several different terms for it, you need to be able to remove unnecessary permissions. That will then stop permissions creep and this snowball effect, as we showed with Anna earlier. And then finally, using a true identity and access management solution to automate access management is key in this model. And Tenfold is the solution that is going to enable you to do that. Now, we're happy to take any questions that you may have. And if you would like to contact us, my email address is on there, telephone number, access to our website. Please feel free to visit me on LinkedIn and to connect with me. Thank you very much for your time today, and I look forward to welcoming any questions that you may have. Have a great day and enjoy the rest of the event.